All right, welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. Today we're going to continue our PC 101 type of course, but today we're going to talk about the CPU coolers. So, be right back. All right, so last time we sort of gave you a CPU 101 course, AMD and Intel being the two boys on the block. But today we're going to see also how choosing a CPU has a lot to do with what you're going to choose in a cooler. So let's go to the presentation. We're going to transition, make this small, and make this big. All right. So CPUs are going to run very, very hot. And there's got to be a way to cool them down and keep them cool, or else, you can have catastrophic failure. So it's very, very important when to listen this short presentation and see how you can do it right. And stay within budget too. You don't have to spend a lot. You can, but you don't have to. So let's go over to the purpose. The CPUs run hot and they need a way to vent heat. A cooler will do just that. No, there are two categories of coolers: water coolers and air coolers. We're going to identify both and what is necessary for your particular CPU. So understanding your CPU. Certain CPUs require more power than others. More power going into the CPU, or wattage, equals more heat. It's just the way it works. Some require a lot of power. So let's look at them. There's, again, two boys on the block. There's the red team and the blue team, AMD and Intel. AMDs usually are more efficient. They don't require a lot of power, typically 65 to 70 watts, and that requires less heat. Intel requires more power, therefore they require more heat. So depending which one of these boys you're going to go with, you're going to have to choose wisely. So again, in this slide, AMD mostly 65-70 watts. Some can be up to 105 watts. When you choose your CPU, check to see the total TDP, or the power that it can go ahead and that it requires. Intel, on the other hand, notice the big difference. It is about a 45% difference, 95 watts up to 130 watts. So that is a big, big difference in the way these two use power. So you're going to have to require a better cooler on Intels than you would on AMD. Now, before we pick a cooler, you're going to pick a case. And we're going to talk about cases later, but cases can dictate what kind of coolers that you can go ahead and have, because they can only fit so much. So they're going to have listed on their instructions or on their websites CPU height. So you need to know that before you pick a CPU, the CPU height. So, measurements, tower ones, and we're going to talk about this in a sec. These are the tall stacks of radiators. Now, notice the Peerless Assassin. I have this one inside this computer here. But notice it's going to give me a height on it, which is 155 millimeters. They misspelled height, but that's what it is. So 155 millimeters. So if I buy a case, it's got to allow for that. So very important. Air coolers use aluminum fins to quickly dissipate the heat. The more fins, the more vents, the faster it dissipates. So it's just one of those rules of thermals. Fans are used to push air through it in order to cool down those fins. So as the vapor goes in and up and out of the radiators, they can condensate and come back down and then continue this rotation or this circuit. Now, at the bottom of this one, you'll see too, right down here, these are called heat tubes. The more heat tubes, the more vapor is going to go through and circulate. You want as many as you can do on heat tubes. I don't think you'll see less than 4, but you can see as many as 7. But more the better, because that gets more heat through the radiators. And these coolers are usually much more cost efficient for you. I mean, you can usually get a lot more coolant for the dollar with a tower heat cooler. Now, this air cooler that I got, the Peerless Assassin, costs like $40, and it is one of the best on the market. You'll have a hard time beating it. Now, air coolers can come in 2 different varieties: a tower one, like the Assassin, or a low-profile one. Now, if you could fit a tower one, awesome. But if you can't, you could go with a low-profile one. Instead of 2 towers or 1 large tower, you'll have a tower laying on its back with a fan that's pushing air through it. Now, there is an advantage to a low profile, because the fan's going to push through it down. And by doing that, that air that comes down through it is going to cool down everything around the CPU. So it actually has an advantage, and some of them are extremely good. So the next one is going to be a water cooler. It is what it says, is what it means. Instead of air, water is used in a closed system to be pushed through it, cooling the water as it heats up from the CPU. There's a pump, and that's going to push the water through this radiator and circulate it, very much like the ones that we have in our cars. So you got a water pump in your car, you got a water pump in here. Now, some of these do allow for refilling. Now, you may want to look at that, because inevitably they will lose their water. And, natural evaporation within it, seepage will actually happen. So these are going to last as long as an air cooler one. There are 3 sizes. They come in increments of 120. There's a 120 size. To me, that's a useless one. It's just not a very good cooler. Do not buy a 120. 240, which is 2 120s. Very good. Works on almost everything. 360, if you can fit it, works on everything. Absolutely the best one on the market is going to be a 360. Height doesn't matter, because it's just a cap that, and where the pump is, it goes over the CPU. But the radiator size does. That's where the 120, 240, 360 comes in, because there's a big long radiator that goes on that, and that you have to have a place to put that in order for it to have air to come through it. All right, so let's get me back to normal here. Oh, all right, there we go. I'm back. So, I hope this helps you out a little bit on picking an air cooler, a CPU cooler. There's air and water. Air is the cheapest, and you can get an extremely good one. I do recommend the Peerless Assassin. They come in black or they come in the white. I built a white case. It's absolutely stunning. You can see it. That's it, working right there. And the waters ones are very good. This costs $40. You're going to pop out about $130 for a decent water one. And they can come pretty cool looking. So that's really up to you. But if you have an Intel, the Peerless Assassin will work really good on an Intel, but a 240 or 360, depending on your Intel. If it requires 130 watts or so, it's going to require a lot more cooling. And going with a water cooler, a 360, is probably your best bet for a high-end Intel chip. Nothing wrong with power going into it as long as you manage the heat on it. So very, very important. Otherwise, if you don't manage the heat well, you are doomed to what's called throttling and or catastrophic failure. So make sure that when you pick your CPU, you pick appropriate cooling for that CPU. Our next one is going to be on the motherboard. So we're going to talk about motherboards in our next episode. So I hope you enjoyed this, and it helps you out. We'll see you guys in the next episode.